Welcome back to the Staffing Playbook podcast, where we dive deep into the strategies, insights, and real world lessons that drive success in the staffing industry. I'm your host, Steve Farrell, and I'm joined by our co host, John Viev.
Bourgeois.
Welcome, John Viev. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you doing today, Stephen?
I'm doing great. It's the middle of March and it's snowing here in Utah. So, what else could you ask for than some fresh powder to go skiing on?
Well, as an avid gardener, if you can't, guess, it's 72 degree and just sunny and gorgeous out today.
See, we'll get that like tomorrow in Utah, and then it'll go back to like 30 degrees outside. It's fine. We'll be fine. Our plants won't be, though. All right. So today we have a powerhouse guest, someone who knows exactly how to build, scale, and even exit a staffing business. She's built and sold multiple businesses, including a $28 million exit to a publicly traded company. She now helps entrepreneurs do exactly the same. Diane Prince is a serial entrepreneur, a business coach, a content marketing expert who has mastered the art of using storytelling and content to attract the right clients, build trust, and create massive business opportunities. If you have ever felt stuck on what to post, I know I do, struggle with content paralysis, guilty again, or if you've wondered how to leverage thought leadership to grow your business, this episode is for you. Diane is going to break down exactly how to create irresistible content without overthinking, and she'll share some of the same strategies she's used to scale and sell her companies. So get ready for an episode packed with actionable insights, real-world strategies, and game-changing advice. Diane Prince, welcome to the Staffing Playbook.
Hey guys.
I can tell you, I am so excited that you're here. I work in marketing. Okay. And as a small business owner, I've done a whole bunch of things, and I wish I knew you before. All right. Lay it on us.
Hey guys. Hey Genevieve and hey Stephen. Nice to see you guys.
So good to see you. Diane, I met you a couple of weeks ago at Dan Morey's Staffing Sales Summit. And, we talked about you in a prior episode, getting ready for the Sales Summit. Really impressed with your resume. But one thing that impressed me more than anything else was your stand-up GPT during the happy hour mixer. That was just hilarious. It was brilliant. How did you come up with that?
Well, I've always wanted to, I've always wanted to be a stand-up comedian, but I never did. I went into staffing. And so, but when, and I love being on stage. And the one thing though, I know that joke writing is kind of a formula, but I never really cracked it. Like I tried, but not super intentionally. So anyway, one day, not that very long ago, about a month ago, I just told ChatGPT, all I said was, from what you know about me and my clients, write me a stand-up comedy act. And then I said, make it dirtier. and then I posted that piece of it, like part of it on LinkedIn. And so from there, Dan saw it. A lot of people saw it, and I shared like about the process. So a lot of people got some traction. A lot of people started doing it themselves and tagging me and sharing it. And then Dan said, we should do this at the Staffing Sales Summit. This was all conversation on LinkedIn. And I said, well, and actually I had been wanting a spot to speak at his summit. And I mentioned it to him a couple of times. And I think he acted like he didn't hear me. He just kind of ignored me. And I'm like, okay. And he's a client. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go tread lightly. So when he said that, I said, well, I've been trying to figure out a way to get into your conference. And he said, we'll fly to Orlando in 2 weeks and do this. So then I rewrote it. Like I got really into it. I treated it like it was like my debut on the Tonight Show or something, but it was really fun.
Well, now I think with AI, you truly can be a comedian, because I thought you were a comedian like as a side gig or something, because that was hilarious. You did phenomenal.
Thank you. Well, now I am. Now I can say it.
Here's the thing, Stephen. It's all about delivery. Okay, you can take anything. It's all about delivery and timing.
Wow, look at the marketer speaking already.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I agree.
Oh, that's great. Well, Diane, I hope I didn't ruin your intro. Did I miss anything introducing you?
It was perfect. And by the time that the listeners finished with this episode, you will not have any analysis paralysis or like writer's block when you're writing your content. So I'm going to tell you how to do that.
Well, today's topic, for those of you that may have missed it after that awesome intro, today's topic is how you can create irresistible content without thinking about what to write next. I may have slaughtered it, but irresistible content. Diane's going to teach us, take all the thinking out of it. This is the staffing playbook. So we are going to just grill Diane on her strategies, on the playbook. So if you're listening in, take notes. If you want your marketing team to listen to this, tag them in the comments or send them a link, because Diane's going to drop the playbook today right here as a gift to our audience. So Diane, are you ready to get started?
I'm ready. And you guys are slick. I love your special effects.
Working on it. Thank you.
Oh, here, listen, I know I'm ready for you to take us play by play.
Play by play.
All right.
So first question, you've built and sold multiple companies, including staffing companies.
Mhm.
In some of your most recent, companies that you've led, how did content play a role in growing your business?
Yeah, I'll say like content, my business now, and I have a couple of businesses. One is, as you mentioned, coaching business owners, staffing and recruiting agency owners. And then I also have a virtual assistant agency where we have offshore people who do anything basically that you don't do in person, that doesn't need to be done in person. And so content with this business has been, ever since I learned these techniques I'm going to share with you, that's what's I used to do cold email outreach, and I got all my business through that. I write a pretty good email using these techniques. When I really started being intentional and using these techniques on LinkedIn, I get at least 5 incoming leads every day.
Wait a minute. You were successful with cold email outreach. Do we need to do a completely different podcast episode for this?
It's pretty funny. People would answer my emails and say, I never respond to these, but I'm responding to this one. Yeah. So that was really my thing. But then I started, once I started marketing, that was a huge game changer. And I don't even do cold email outreach anymore, even though it has worked for me really well. Mm-hmm.
I've got to pick your brain on that later. We'll take that offline.
Yeah. Totally.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I read all about you. Stephen had the pleasure of meeting you, and now I'm incredibly jealous. But okay, so when it comes to like, now that you've gone and moved into a different type of content and you've gotten out of the whole cold email, like reach out, okay, is there like a specific moment or a time, or just like when your brain was like, wow, okay, what I'm doing now is actually driving in real business growth? Is there anything that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, it was. So with my coaching, I was started out being a generalist, which is so against like any of the advice that I share. And I was coaching all kinds of tech founders, business owners. I had a client who owned a clothing store. Was working with some staffing and recruiting agency owners, but I wasn't focused. My content wasn't focused. And then once I started, I hired my own coach, and he's like, why are you not focusing on recruiting and staffing agency owners? He's like, you've got more experience in your pinky finger than these other coaches. So I was like, okay, let me try that. And that's once I really niched, I got it. That was game changing. And then that really allowed me to write this like super specific content that really speaks to people.
Fascinating.
Your coach told you need to find a niche, so you can focus your messaging and your outreach on that niche in staffing and recruiting.
Yeah, and it was like I already had the niche, like I already had. I mean, it was already obvious, but he was like, "Why aren't you? Well, just do it." And so, yeah, that was like, that cost me $12,000 to hear that. When I mean, I share the same advice. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Part of being a staffing firm, we had our hands in a lot of different things. And this last year, we got really clear on what we're good at and what we're not good at.
Yeah.
And so we really niched down to like, let's focus on what we're good at, what we excel, where we're best in class on what we do. And let's just remove everything else. Yes, maybe we can come back to those later, maybe not, but let's get really clear on what we're good at and let's focus it. And I'm a big believer in that, Diane, is the more you spread your resources across lots of different ideas, and just because you can make a sale doesn't mean you should. If you can service that business and focus on those few things and get really good, you can stand out from your competition. Because good, bad, or indifferent, a lot of staffing agencies, they'll just take whatever they can get, any job order, any industry, and sometimes it works, but most of the time it does not, and they stretch their resources way too thin.
Yeah. And you can still decide, whether or not to take that business. But when you're niching, you can look at niching as partially a front end issue. So when it's marketing and it's becoming an expert, that's really, you can only do that like in one field, unless you're, multinational and you have all, big team. So you can decide. A lot of people are afraid to niche and they're afraid of missing out on other business. You can still take that business. And by the way, you'll still get other business. But really, like, having that one ideal client avatar to speak to makes a giant difference.
Absolutely. All right, so let's continue into content. With your recent successes, it sounds like a lot of it's been on LinkedIn. What type of content that consistently worked best for you to build trust, credibility, to establish yourself as an authority where people are reaching out or they're responding to your outreach? What type of content did that look like? What were you posting?
Yeah, so it's all about getting into your client's head. So it's not about sharing necessarily and that's where, when you're not you're sitting, most people will sit there and try to figure out what to write about, when it's really all right in front of you when you just look. So what you want to do, and so when I got really niche, and I used to have a hard time being consistent on LinkedIn, and I'd go to bed at night thinking, oh, maybe tomorrow I'll start being consistent. And then when I finally niched, and I started writing the content that really spoke to my direct audience, that's what made a huge difference. So, and what I mean by that is you want to find out, so it's called, you can call it voice of customer. So you want to find out what your ideal clients are actually saying in their own words. And you have to find this on people are not sharing their deepest, darkest secrets on LinkedIn. They're sharing it in places, either private groups with peers or in places like Reddit that's anonymous.
We're going to get back to Reddit because you brought that up in an earlier discussion I had, and so don't let me forget about that.
Reddit as well. You're 100% correct with that. We'll get back there.
Yeah. I like how you're listening to the voice of your customer, right? Because you want to know what they're saying, what keeps them up at night, what inspires them, and when you're looking at creating content. And if you have that right content, it builds relationships, it builds trust, and trust can turn into revenue, right? Can turn into business.
Absolutely. Yeah, because if people feel like you understand their problems, they're going to think that you're able to solve their problems.
That's right.
Okay, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Genevieve, you got a question?
Oh, I've got a million questions, but we don't have enough time for that today. So I guess I'll go hop into my next question. All right. So many businesses and their owners are just struggling with what to actually post. How do you help your entrepreneurs create content without them getting just stuck in the idea and just paralysis? I mean, I know I work in marketing. And there are times I'm like, oh, I can bang out content like it's nothing. But then there are times when I'm like, and I'm stuck in that paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what would you do?
So, and I'll share with you what I did. And what I recommend is to start out with, set aside a block of time. Maybe it's 2 or 3 hours. It could be on a Saturday where you're going to write 20 posts. Okay. This is how I started out, like 20. So I'm going to have a post for every weekday for the next 4 weeks. And so, and then, okay, so here's an example. So I took Steven's tagline on LinkedIn. Okay. So this is the type of approach I would take. Okay. So I put I copied and pasted part of your tagline.
You did?
Into Reddit. Yes.
No kidding.
So what I put in Reddit was logistics. Can I share?
Yeah, if it'll let you share the screen, go ahead.
I
Should
don't
be a
see
present
the
button.
Oh, present. Okay. Yeah, I'll show you guys. Let's see. Okay, I'm not
Drum
sure.
roll, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Oh, wait, here. Okay, yep. Here we go. Okay, you can see. Okay. So I took from your LinkedIn, I just copied and pasted logistics and manufacturing leaders solve workforce challenges. So I kind of copied, deleted some words. Okay, so here you go. So this is what I would do to start out with. And then you're just looking to see, and it might not be, your industry. I don't, so you basically look at, so I'd sit there, and if I have this block of time, so say I set aside these 2 hours, what I would do if I were you, look at this, and then I would just click on some things. Okay. And then get ideas from here. Okay. Like this is actually perfect. I mean, just as an example, I know companies where it's like hell working as a woman in SCM. Okay. So if that's something that resonates, and you'll know what's going to resonate. But basically, so you take things from, like, this stuff is gold, because this is actually what people are talking about in your field. So then it could be, let's see, how to transition. But you probably want to look, I'd look for things that your hiring managers would be interested in, or, you're looking at candidates. I typically, I think if you want to make content typically for clients, at least now in this economy,
right.
Sometimes it's something you want to know, like if you need more candidates, then you'd focus on candidates. But like something like this, like working in supply chain is very cutthroat. There's 100 comments. There is gold in here. Okay. So this is one technique, is you take things from here, and I guarantee you, if you are a specialist in this niche, you will find things to talk about and use some of the same exact words that these people are saying.
Diane, we could end the podcast now. That was informative. That's was really good.
Gold, diamond, platinum. Okay, like just top tier.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, like, you want to find, you mentioned this earlier, like, where does your audience congregate? What are their pain points, their challenges? And so you literally just went and found them. You just went on Reddit. You used just a small example of my headline on LinkedIn, because I service this industry. And you just found a whole bunch of threads that are actionable, that we can take and speak their language now in our upcoming posts and ads and things like that. Yes.
And when I first started using this technique, I was using, there was a group of women in tech. They since closed, but it's called Alpha. So I went on, when I was business coaching all kinds of clients, I just went on there and I searched anytime somebody asked a question about startups, whenever a founder asked a question about their startup, I answered the question. And then I would share, oh, by the way, I also coach, and I got so many, and people would, like, the person who asked the question always booked a call, then other people booked a call, so that's another example of, like, what you could also do on Reddit, but you find the closed groups that your clients are in, because that's where they're really sharing. People aren't sharing their problems on LinkedIn.
Right.
and then you become, and you can also start answering the questions here. In Reddit, you can answer some questions there. Reddit's a little harder though, because you can't, I mean, you could put your link or whatever, but
Sure.
you start becoming, so when I was doing that on Alpha, and then again, like fill in the blank wherever your people are talking, the moderators started referring me because I was showing up consistently. And I had my virtual assistant check different places every day. Like, what are things that I could answer? And I was answering and showing up consistently, answering the questions, so that in a few months in, it got to be when people were asking questions, the moderators tagged me and they were like, Diane Prince will know the answer to this.
So you just became an authority overnight. Moderators are now tagging you to answer questions.
Yeah. Yes.
And there's a lot of benefits to Reddit just because of like SEO purposes. You can do so much on there for free just by putting in the time. Okay. Putting in the time, putting in that effort, and you get ranked higher. It's fascinating. Sorry, I'm just like, I
Yeah.
could do all day.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And then
it
when you start doing it, like then you say you have a whole month of content, then what happens is people start messaging you questions. So that's what happened to me. I just started and people were like, and some of it I thought was, I don't know, is anyone going to read this or whatever? People were messaging me, I'm obsessed with your content. And then they started asking me questions. So now my team, actually, we keep an entire bank of voice of customer. So I have a huge spreadsheet of all sorts of questions. And anytime that you're doing a client intake, you're gonna get voice of customer. Anytime that a client the one part on LinkedIn that's great to use voice of customer is where they've given recommendations, because then in their own, so a hiring manager giving a recommendation, you look at their given recommendations and you see exactly what they value, what are in their own words, what do they say about the person they're giving the recommendation for. So there's so many different ways to actually get in the head of your ideal client. So you don't have to think about it. You don't have to decide what to write about. It's all right in front of you.
That's what I was about to say. It takes the paralysis out of it, the creative thinking. I mean, that was a creative idea that you just shared with the entire world. And so now it's like, I can just go and get my questions answered on Reddit. Go search what's my audience talking about, and then engage with them, become that authority. I didn't, I've seen those AI generated posts on LinkedIn of like, this person's asking a question, you're an expert, why don't you provide your comments and recommendations. Never thought about looking at my my network and how they're responding to those posts to see how they see the world and their pain points and how they're addressing it.
Yeah. And you can also ask, you can ask ChatGPT too. You can say like, what are 25 things that keep logistic managers up at night? And so that is another tool, but it's not the same as actually the words that your clients are saying.
Yeah.
It's not like genuine customer voice. Those are just more of like kind of like average pain points, right?
Yeah. And those ideas can be really great, but I would go a step further. So if I'm using ChatGPT in that way, I would probably then plug it into Reddit or plug it in somewhere else then to see like, okay, what's like words that are natural to them that they're actually saying.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right. I'm loving this. I can't believe we're 23 minutes in. We've asked you like 2 questions. This is great. This is going to be fun.
We need to go up after this.
All right. So when you talk about making content easy, you've just shared a great example using Reddit, doing the research, finding the voice of your customer. In addition to Reddit, what's your go-to system for consistently generating content without overthinking it?
Yeah, I mean that's really it's setting that block of time aside, and just when I first started getting really consistent, that's what I did, and I scheduled it. I think sometimes when you schedule it though, I don't know if you get as much engagement. I think LinkedIn might treat it differently if you're using like Buffer or something. I'm not sure. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
But so I started, but that's how I started. I started by writing a bunch of posts. I had 3 months scheduled out of posts. So then it was really easy for me to then answer questions, answer comments on my posts. But then after that, I don't even really do that anymore because I just get so many questions. So people are messaging me all the time. So it really just kind of snowballed into that. I don't know if that answers.
You created all that content ahead of time, scheduled it 3 months, in advance in some cases. And so because you, over time, you've been consistent in your posting, you're blocking out a couple hours a week. Now people are coming to you because you've spoken their language, you've spoken to their pain points, and now they're following you as that expert in the space. And so, they're just reaching out to you. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, and now I don't even schedule that time usually anymore. And we just generally see like what people are asking me. So now it's like, it's so easy. Someone will ask me a question. I'll be like, oh, that's a LinkedIn post. So I typically now I do post daily, but I haven't been scheduling them out like I used to, because things just, or like if I get ideas, I keep them on my notepad or whatever, and then I'll post them.
Okay.
That reminds me of Gary Vee. Didn't you guys know Gary Vee? Gary Vaynerchuk?
Who
Yeah.
doesn't?
He talks about don't create content, document your journey, right? I mean, you are creating content, but it's more of that real time that you're speaking to now, where you're getting that content out. It's more real time. You sounds like you still do some scheduling ahead of time, but you're documenting your journey.
And then we turn that into a newsletter. So we were able to see like what content on LinkedIn is working the best. And then now I have 2 weekly newsletters. I have a Tuesday and a Friday newsletter, but we use a lot of the stuff that we see is resonating that people want to read about on LinkedIn for the newsletters.
That's a fantastic way to go and repurpose your content, right? And then also retarget your audience, really add value.
Yeah. And I have a YouTube channel too now. And so and on YouTube, I'll see what questions people will ask. And, and it's interesting too, because I'll do a video and I'll have a purpose for it. And then people ask something that is important to them that I wouldn't have thought of, that it's a question that came out of that. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't my point. And, but that's not what it's about. It's about what did they interpret? What did they get out of it? What do they need to know?
And so now you got a new content piece just by reading the comments.
Yes.
Wow. Do you find a lot of success with YouTube specifically now that you're on YouTube?
I'm getting more, but I really focused, 2024 was all about LinkedIn. And so now 25, we started being more intentional and posting. Now we're posting shorts every day. I'm posting a video every day. So we have a pretty slick system for that. So now I am getting, it is, yes, it's starting.
Do you have tools that you use to get all that pushed out to multiple platforms, repurposing the content into newsletters and videos? Are you using any tools that assist you in that?
Yeah, we're using for shorts, we're using Opus. And my team, my virtual assistant team, they basically I could not do all this stuff without them. The newsletter was sort of just details and technical, and they just set up they helped me set up the drafts and schedule it. And so people join now, they're going to get email 1. The people who joined a year ago are getting email 52. So I really needed that. Having the ops people to put it all in place was huge. That really allowed me to stay consistent and just have the ideas and let them put it all together. So they're the ones that do every Monday now I get a run sheet from my team, and they'll give me an SEO outline of the video I need to make for YouTube. Then we turn it into a blog, and then it goes into a LinkedIn post. So we have a pretty cool system, but it took me a while to put that together.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you're absolutely operating with a full nurture stream, going through different platforms and utilizing different tools. Stephen, when can I get a couple of virtual assistants?
I was going to ask you the same thing.
You realize how much work I'm going to have to do after this call?
Well, I have good news. I've got some people. I think you're going to talk to them, Stephen. I think.
I know.
We got some good people. Yeah, you're in the right place.
I love it. Thank you.
Well, staffing agencies have limited resources, right?
Yeah, and I mean, this is because that was, there's another thing, but I really set out to build this business that I'm building now. I love building scalable businesses, and I set out to what if I could be the visionary, and all my main responsibility is to articulate my vision and then have other people execute it. So that's, to me, was that was
Brilliant.
the challenge I wanted to face, or I wanted to beat in this business.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a digression. Shameless plug digression.
Plugged all the way.
Listen, we're going play by play today. Okay.
That's
It's
right.
fine. And it's okay if we get off script. I mean, not like it's scripted, but you know what I mean? Like, this is part of the genuine conversation of figuring out what works and what doesn't. I know I don't like throwing spaghetti against the wall, but sometimes you have to try.
Yes.
You've had moments like that where it's like, I don't understand why this is not working. And then you just tried anything, and has anything actually stuck that like was completely different than what you expected it to?
Yeah. I mean, some posts I think are like super brilliant. And then no one says it, it's like I don't get a lot out of it. One thing was, I was like, okay, so what should I post today? And somebody just asked me the simplest, somebody had messaged me, and it was like, beyond, I think he said like, beyond a laptop ATS. And he said one other thing. Oh, and a phone. What do you need to start a staffing agency? I copied and pasted that. And that was my most viral post. Like that's another thing that you want that works really well. Our post where people will have opinions, because I had over 200 people commented with opinions. So that's another really good, like those open-ended questions where people are going to want to share their own knowledge. That also gets a lot of traction.
Yeah, I'll give you a shameless plug. Back during COVID, there was a few companies that recognized the challenge of bringing the workforce back because of all the stimulus checks and PPE, and so Target, they bumped their wages up significantly, and so I wrote a post about how Target's modeling the way and how others should follow suit. It was a polarizing topic for whatever reason at the time. So polarizing that LinkedIn actually messaged me and said, we want to highlight your post as part of our top 5 news articles for the day or for the week. And I'm like, all right. But yeah, I made a lot of friends and a lot of enemies based on that post, but it was polarizing, and it got, tens of thousands of comments, and
Wow.
got a lot of exposure there.
That's great. Yeah, I love that.
So, speaking of, I mentioned a minute ago when Genevieve said she wanted a personal assistant, a virtual assistant. Staffing agencies are, we have limited resources, right? Doesn't matter your size. Most companies have limited resources. What's the simplest way to create content that attracts clients or maybe candidates when you have those limited resources?
Yeah, well, the things that I already suggested, those are definitely like, you can do them yourself. You can do them free. And then the other, what was I going to say? I'm totally blanking on it. Shoot, that's embarrassing. There was I'll tell you another. Okay, another thing to do when you're in staffing, a kind of post that works really well is to show people how you recruit. So like, if you could say like, okay, if I needed to fill whatever, like if I needed to fill an industrial engineering role by next Friday, here's what I would do. And then you use Loom. Loom's another tech, you asked about tech,
Loom.
I use Loom. Loom, you record your screen.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Loom is great. Like that. And so those are some of the original posts I started doing. Like mine were, if I needed to get a new recruiting client this week, this is what I would do. And I've also shown, this is exactly how I got a $5 million contract. And I showed the screenshots of all of the conversations. And then I had my team blur out the personal details. Right. But actually showing. So if you said like, okay, if I needed to place whatever, if I needed to place a forklift driver by next Friday, here are the steps that I would do. And you show the screen and you show exactly what your process is. That works really well too, because people are like, they know what they're like, he knows what he's talking about. or she knows, like, it's like they see your expertise. You're not just like, oh, hey, I have this role or whatever, or, hey, this is what I think about AI and recruiting. Nobody cares about that. But if you show them,
Shoot.
this is actually how I did it. And if they want to do it themselves, fine. But your clients are probably not going to be the DIY people. They're going to be like, okay, he knows his stuff. I'm going to hire him to do this for me. This is really complicated. I'm obviously not going to do this myself. It's fascinating how he does it. I'm going to hire you. That's been working really well for staffing agencies.
So sharing your expertise in the ways how you're doing it, demonstrating value, but also it's like, that's really complicated. We're just going to have you do it for us. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm game.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I like that, because you're showcasing your value to those that understand it, and they're going to apply it and run with it, which is great. But then, your prospective clients or current clients are seeing your expertise and going, wow, like, why do I need to figure it out? Like, Diane's already figured it out. Let me call Diane and just have her do it. Obviously she can. She just demonstrated it.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like what hiring manager, like engineering manager, wouldn't want to see, like, exactly how somebody's going to find a Java engineer or whatever. I mean, it's interesting too. Like, oh, how do they do it? Like, let me just see.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really fun. Do you just do a live stream all day when you're working?
No.
Well,
you should.
On average, it takes about 37 hours to go and hire one associate. So, I mean, you got to keep that in mind. And so, like, maybe actually taking some of that industry knowledge and throwing that out there as well, because that also adds to, like, labor costs. But I mean, just having that great demonstration, that visual, here's what we do, this is how we do it, blank, blank, blank. And then it's like, oh, I don't know. Full disclosure, it does take roughly 37 hours.
That's great. Yes. I like that. That's awesome.
All right. Well, I know storytelling is a big part of your approach. You're a great storyteller. Obviously, you've shared some great stories already. And when you did your stand-up comedy, you're a great presenter. And so I want to know how staffing professionals, whether they're in sales or recruiting, or they're an entrepreneur or a business owner, how did they use storytelling to build trust and engagement?
Yeah. So, well, the other thing that we haven't discussed yet that's important in using these techniques is also using your tone of voice. So you're getting the voice of customer and their, like, what they're asking and their words, but you're also going to apply your own personality and your own tone of voice. I have an exercise on this. It's like, if you go out, maybe we'll share my link tree. There's a finding your tone of voice exercise. So that's one of the things, because in an industry that is heavily commoditized, and sometimes there's not really that much difference from one staffing company to another as far as, like, on the outside, like, what the services are that they provide. So using your own tone of voice and being real is something that I find that people seem to crave. And it also works better, like it works better with Google, because Google can tell if things are just generated by AI, or if you're actually, like, it's like actually saying it yourself. And also you have the credibility and you have the stories, because Google likes that when you can share your own personal stories. So I think storytelling, people like to hear stories, but they also want to hear themselves in your story. So it goes back to, like, making it relatable. Like when I did the ChatGPT comedy, I'm like, wait, this is like, being a corporate comedian is such a great gig, because it was so easy to say things that people relate to. And then I realized too, like, I thought about it listening to the other speakers who were not doing a comedy act, but when they said something that everyone related to, people still laughed, even though it was a joke. So I was like, it's all about that, like, relatability, where people are like, yes, I see myself in that story.
Yeah, like you're one of your opening line in the stand-up comedy is, you said, my career, I love reaching out to people who hate being reached out to, or something like that. It was just, the premise of that. It was so hilarious as a salesperson. It's like, I relate to that. Like, I love reaching out to people those people don't want to hear from me.
I said, I'm addicted. My name's Diane, and I'm addicted to messaging people who don't want to hear from me. And people loved it. Like they just, because who doesn't relate to that? Who's in sales?
That's right. Yeah, and putting the customer or your prospect, your audience, letting them, see themselves through you, right? It's that hero's journey. People love a good transformation story, right? Where it's that hero story where you're up against the impossible, you're ready to quit, and then you find that one thing, right? And you roll with it, and then there's lots of other challenges and obstacles, but you come out as the hero. And people want to be the hero in their own story, and if you can help them see themselves be the hero in your story, I think you've got them, right?
Yeah. And experience. I mean, also like experience is something that can't be, and I know people don't love to hear this if they don't have the experience, but that's part of it too. And everybody has different experiences. So really tap into things that are real for you, because people can tell.
Yeah.
So genuine authenticity, way better than AI. Stephen, remember that.
Shoot. Dang it.
I'm still a fan of AI. I am still a fan of AI, but like for that skit that I did, I spent, because the first one was like more totally ChatGPT, but then when I had that opportunity to do it in person, I spent a lot of time talking back and forth to ChatGPT. I don't like this. Why don't you talk about this, or this happened, incorporate that. So use ChatGPT or AI, whatever, as a writing assistant, but you have to have your own tone of voice.
I'm looking at Stephen on that.
Hey, is it wrong that my new therapist his name's Chad, which is ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Is that wrong?
Mine is too. Full on. Like, so my personal Gmail, full on. You'll see things like, he hasn't called yet. What should I do?
That's good.
Full disclosure.
All right, we've got so many more questions. I know we're coming up on time, so we'll ask just a few more here. You've given some really clear, easy to implement strategies, that was the goal today. Now let's talk about some of the common mistakes, when it comes to content that you see business owners, entrepreneurs, people in staffing make, and how can they fix that?
Okay. This one's easy to answer. Okay. One common mistake is just boring, like just posting your jobs on LinkedIn. Nobody cares.
Ooh.
We've got this great opportunity, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That's one thing. The other thing is being in an echo chamber, talking to other recruiters. If that's not your client, because I know people who have over 100,000 followers and they're not getting any business from it, because their client are not recruiters, but they're all talking to each other. Okay. So that's a big mistake. Another mistake is it's fairly easy for recruiters to get huge followers because of job seekers.
Yeah.
So you really want to be just be careful about that. Like when people are like my team now, when I get connection requests, so I don't know, like I don't have a huge following, but I'll get like 100 to 120 new followers a week. So like we monitor that.
Wow.
But they also
Mrs. Popular.
Well, I'm not getting the hundreds of thousands like you got on your article. I'm like,
right.
I've got to dig into more of that. but so we'll check. So one other thing is that when I got really intentional, my analytics completely shifted so that almost all of my followers and connection requests became my ideal clients. When before it was a bunch of like different, like people trying to sell me things or like, marketing, whatever. But now it's like almost all my target audience. So really like this, so that's a common mistake, is not talking to your target audience and just talking to people. Like you can get vanity metrics and you can get a ton of candidates following you, but if they're not the right candidates, it doesn't make any difference. It just makes your LinkedIn really noisy. Oh, there's one thing I hate. Oh, sorry. I know I interrupted.
You go.
Okay. The other thing that is so cheesy is when people are in like pods and I'm sorry if you're in a pod, but like people be like in like a professional group or something with other like business owners, and they all agree to like comment on this like pod. It might work. I just think it's super cringe because you can tell I'm like every single person that's, I don't know. I think that's cringy. So.
Oh my goodness, because I was like, ooh, and as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, that's cringeworthy right there. Ooh. Okay. And on top of that, I think I actually mentioned this in like our previous podcast. Do you know how many weird LinkedIn messages I have from people asking me for random things? And I'm like, I don't even open it. I know you're just trying to sell me something. And it's like, what was it? Hope this email finds you well. Like, so Stephen and I, we were talking about that. But I love the fact that you mentioned that just be intentional and really actually, it's like not all connections are good connections, you know, like especially vanity metrics, they're not worth it, right?
Yeah, and my team looks, so they go through my connection requests, and then if they're not an ideal client, they can follow me, but we don't accept their request. And another thing, this isn't content writing, but one thing that's really worked well once I had the content out there and people were following me and reading my content, everybody that when profile viewers is a huge source of, I get a really high conversion on this. So when people are looking at my profile, my team looks at that also and sees if they're an ideal client. And then they get a message, hey, saw you viewed my profile. Were you just curious or do you need help? That works really well.
That's super smart.
Is that why it took you like a month to accept my request, Diane, on LinkedIn? You just, because you get 150 a day?
Oh, we'll talk about that offline. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm even intimidated to even try to add you at this point. I'm just,
it did not take that long for me to accept the request.
I know. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I can't remember how long. I'm sure it was pretty instant because you saw my face and you're like, oh, he looks interesting.
I think I even waited like a year and a half to add him. Like, I'd love to just.
That Stephen guy.
You go up on LinkedIn one time. Okay, so we got to ego check him.
You do, yeah. And Mike Burberry, and I'm not saying, I might be saying his name wrong. He was at the summit. Him and I hashed it out about number of followers versus like your audience should be following you, and that doesn't have to be that big. So that was fun. He helped me see a bigger picture, which you just explained. It's not just about how many followers you have. It's got to be your ideal audience following you.
Yes.
Quality over quantity.
That's right. All right. If a staffing firm is just starting with content, right? This is a big part of the discussion today. It's around content. What's the one type of content they should focus on first? Like if they're just starting from scratch, they've done the static posts maybe once a month from their corporate page. They're listening to this podcast and they're listening to you, Diane, and they're going, ooh, like we got to do something different. Where do they start? Like, what's that one thing when it comes to content they should start with?
Yeah, we'll do it from your personal page, not your corporate page. So that's another common mistake. Nobody really engages with corporate pages. It's just, I don't know. So that is a common mistake. I mean, you can do
personal page,
but and then figure out where your clients are talking, and just schedule out, write 20 posts, answering their questions, and just start with that and see what happens and see what resonates.
Okay. That's good place to start. So write 20 posts, get them all put together.
And then what you can do to kind of boost that engagement, say you're going to post at like 7:15 a.m., go on LinkedIn about a half an hour earlier, start engaging in other people's posts, and then post yours and then keep on engaging for like about another half an hour after that.
That's really good. Start where you are. Use what you have, right? Do what you can. I like how, if you can get a group of postings, 20 put together, it takes you a couple hours, and then you've got enough content for the next couple of weeks.
Yes. Then you kind of then you can go on and answer questions and answer comments and things like that. Yeah.
So I've challenged my sales team to do just that. And, some of the feedback, they're doing it, but it's hard. And they're just, they're saying they don't have enough time, right? They're trying to make time, but, what do you say to, people like myself that don't have enough time to post?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It is a decision to like just what were you going to say?
Well, so when I was previously a recruiter and I worked in sales with the company I was working for, they would actually go and schedule out corporate posts, but it all went through our personal LinkedIn profiles. And that probably could be the best way of doing it. But the thing is, here's going to be the problem. If they're not going in there and engaging and interacting with other posts, I mean, like, do you think if we went and did that extra step on the marketing side to go and help out and it just automate things, but do you think it would actually even be worthwhile if they're not going to commit time every day into, sorry, my poor dog, he's just very loud. But do you think if it's even worthwhile for us to go out of our way to do that if they're not going to interact?
It's probably better than nothing.
Okay.
And especially like if you're getting some eyeballs on it and you're writing it anyway. So it's, I mean, it doesn't sound like it's going to be much more an extra lift. So I think it's better than nothing. But you know, like if I were really going to intentionally create a LinkedIn strategy for my business, I would probably have it like individualized for recruiters, for each recruiter, because everybody's different. And it depending on what you're like, if they're 360, if they're doing sales, like it would depend on what they're trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, if I was really going to do it, I would give them the training. But it's whatever you're put, when you said that about the time, not having the time. I mean, that's like, I hear people saying, I don't have time to sell. Well, that's the lifeline of your business. Like, if you don't have time to sell, you're not going to have clients. You know,
That's
your
right.
pipeline can dry up. So it is making the time.
Well, I
And
mean,
then
have your coffee in the morning, have your phone, go out and just start taking a couple minutes.
And that's why I like to do that, like Saturday example, like the 2 hours on Saturday. Like time blocking can work really well when you're you have an outcome attached to it. So you could say like, and I mean, and if you're asking your team to do it, you also can't be pulling them into meetings every 5 minutes. You know, you do have to give them the space to do it. So
You're right about that.
no.
You do. You need to give them the time to block. That's a great tip. I'm going to take that back to the team.
Yeah.
We're canceling our meeting.
I'll have a
We'll
meeting.
post on LinkedIn.
Let's have a meeting about this.
Let's have a meeting about our meeting.
Listen, I'm going to remind you of that, but honestly, like think of it this way: it could be something that would be really beneficial. Where maybe it's instead of it being an actual meeting, but there's a 15-minute time block to go and help out with the success. And I love this idea, and I love this concept in general.
I'm coining a new term: social selling blitz. Instead of a sales blitz, social selling blitz. So, team, if you're listening, next Friday, we're doing a social selling blitz on LinkedIn. We're going to block out 45 minutes and we're going to have a lot of fun.
That would be fun. And I mean, have a challenge, like have them look at Reddit and stuff and like talk about it. And I mean, let me know how it goes. I love that.
I will. Yeah.
I can't wait.
So we've gone way over time. You've been awesome, Diane. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience today we have not covered? Any last minute tips?
Yeah, just stay consistent. Sometimes that's the hardest part, is consistency. And then this stuff works best when paired with sales. Like sales and marketing go hand in hand. So the stuff that we're talking about that's really should start creating inbound leads. It's also going to show people, like if you're doing sales outreach, they're going to look at your LinkedIn. So look at it as all goes together. Be patient. You know, do the work, grind, you know, as much, you know, do the work, hustle, but also you have to have some patience because some of this does take time.
It does take time. It's the long game.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right. Well, Diane, for those that are interested in learning more about you, and if they see the value in today's discussion and maybe they want to explore how you might be able to help them take the thinking out of creating content, how do people find you?
Yeah, so my website, like you have up, and then LinkedIn. You can pretty easily find me on LinkedIn or YouTube. Just type in Diane Prince, although I don't know if you know this, Diana Prince is Wonder Woman's alias. So you're going to get a lot of Wonder Woman and Lady Di when you Google me, but you will still find me. I'm the only one in staffing that I know of.
You know, I Googled you and found you on the Marie Osmond show.
Oh, I was
from 10 years ago. I thought that was really cool.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Diane. We'd love to have you back on future episodes. A lot of content here. Definitely, you held true to the staffing playbook where we give you the play by play. And really, if you're thinking about how to social sell in 2025, listen to this podcast again. Diane just gave you some very actionable tips that are free that you can run with. And keep in mind that it's the long game. So be patient with the process, but put in the time, stay committed, be consistent, and you'll see the change in your outreach strategy and those that are reaching out to you. And this is just one step closer to helping establish you as an authority in your space. So thank you, Diane. What a pleasure.
And you have been just phenomenal and just a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Well, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We will see you next Friday. Genevieve is going to be interviewing me on selling and staffing in 2025, how to be successful. So buckle up. This one's going to be fun. But we'll give you some actionable tips.
My grilling questions. They're sizzling. All right, we'll catch you all next time.
See you next Friday.
Running the Staffing Playbook podcast.